Hip hop has changed the world. Every facet of life that we know, not just in the United States, but in the world, has been touched on by hip hop. This book, On Hip Hop at 50, was compiled by young scholars at Howard University who were determined to tell the whole story of hip hop. I would like to introduce each of them in the order that they will speak. First, speaking to us will be Miss Alvita Addison, who has looked at hip hop and its importance to resistance for the African American community and the African community worldwide. That she will be followed by Miss Tamia McDonald. And Miss Tamia McDonald, both she and Miss Addison are PhD students at Howard University, and she is looking at the Black Panther Party and its impact on hip hop. Next, we will hear thirdly from Mr. Richard Montgomery, who will talk about the businesses and hip hop. We will also hear from one of the alumni of the department, Dr. Abena Lewis Moon, a professor at Coppin University who talks about hip hop and its impact on fashion. Each of these young scholars are dramatically changing not just hip hop and the view of hip hop, but how hip hop history has been changed. I'll start with Ms. Addison to talk about hip hop and resistance in its worldwide context.
Hello, everyone. Yes, my research was actually tracing hip hop in terms of the African diaspora. In the African diaspora, we can find that hip hop actually began in Africa with the drums and the other instruments that were actually taken from the continent through capture, through the Middle Passage, into the enslavements on the plantations here in America. There was a myth that Black people in America did not have any culture. But since then, many scholars have debunked that myth. And we see that in hip hop. We see that as it translates from the music of the resistance movements when they were escaping the plantation until the civil rights movement. Even before that, Jim Crow. We saw it in the blues with Jim Crows and in R&B music and soul music. We can reflect on James Brown and Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud. So we also see it in Kendrick Lamar and his new record. What is that new record? What's the title of the new record? They Ain't Like Me.
They
Not like us.
They not like
Okay,
us.
I haven't heard it, but anyway. So I wanted to stress that hip hop did not begin in America; that it actually began in the African diaspora.
It is so important that we continue this idea and the ideals of hip hop and resistance. Ms. McDonald, please introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Tamia McDonald. I'm a second year PhD student at Howard University. My area of study is the Black Panther Party. And in this book, I talked about how the Black Panther Party's influence was greatly impactful in hip hop. Because in the hip hop generation, these are the children that were raised in both the context of the Black Panther Party, as in they possibly experienced the social programs and the social support that the Black Panthers provided, or in the outlook after the Panther Party had collapsed. And you see, with economics-wise, between stagflation and Reagan, there is a lack of arts programs, a lack of community support, a lack of music programs. And in a way, hip-hop was a way for them to both democratize music and say, this is what's happening in my community. Is it happening in yours? It was a way to work with what you had, because you might not have the music lessons, but you have a disc that you could DJ with. It was an alternate form for gang violence, because instead of having violence in the streets, you had b-boy groups who had MCs, and it was a way for the community to come together in a impactful way and in a positive way, and also teach and talk about their own history and their own experiences and connect the movement across the nation, essentially. Because though music at the time, or though you can always, call someone up, across the country and talk and organize, music was a way for people to actually hear the story and understand that they are not alone. And this is in the sense of the Black Panther Party. It was a way to connect people across the country and a way to embolden the Black community and people of color to speak their own truth and to fight for their own rights. Because in a way, your music was what you wanted to talk about, not just, oh, this is what works for the label.
It is so important, as she said, to understand the history and the impact on community. And it's not just artistic in the sense of what she's pointed out and change, but we also see businesses change dramatically. Mr. Montgomery, could you introduce yourself and talk about business in particular in reference to hip hop and its history with business?
Yes. So my name is Richard Montgomery. I am a second year PhD student in the history department at Howard University, studying United States and public history. And in this book, my article looks at the influence of Booker T. Washington's entrepreneurial ideas and how they have been indirectly embodied by the hip hop industry. So I specifically take a look at the Houston hip hop community, and Houston's hip hop community is a lot more community centered. So one thing that Booker T. Washington really emphasized was economic self-sufficiency. So Black people creating their own economic opportunities, cooperation. So that could be cooperation within the African-American community or outside, and then community uplift. So it was not just enough to become an entrepreneur, a businessman or businesswoman. You couldn't just have individual success. You had to lift up your community with you. And I think Houston really does this well, simply because they're very tied to their community. They began within Houston, and Houston during the mid to late 20th century was victim to many aspects of systemic racism, such as redlining, lack of funding for public infrastructure. And despite all these issues, they use hip hop as a vehicle to create economic opportunity and lift up their community. Now, we know many hip hop artists, when they start to get big, they tend to leave their community behind. But Houston rejects that. They really are focused on selling their records to their people and really creating that opportunity and rectifying a lot of the issues that they face. So, and on top of that, Booker T. Washington also emphasized using your talents to go beyond just the industry that you're involved in. And a lot of Houston's hip hop artists, they have ventured outside of the hip hop industry and have taken on projects such as opening restaurants, creating community relief funds, and many different aspects of entrepreneurship. So they're very much embodying the ideals that Booker T. Washington specified.
Thank you so very much. Our next speaker will talk about one aspect of business that has flourished in light of hip hop and its expansion worldwide. It's fashion. Dr. Lewis Moon, would you please introduce yourself and give us an overview of how hip hop has changed fashion?
Yes, I'm Dr. Abena Lewis Moon. I'm a professor of history at Coppin State University and an alum of Howard University. Many people are familiar with the tenets of hip hop: DJing, b-boying or breakdancing, emceeing, of course, the music aspect and rapping, and also graffiti. But one of the tenets that is lesser focused, well, that is not focused on as much, is the knowledge of self. And the knowledge of self has been expressed through cooperative economics, as we heard, through activism, as we heard, and it can also be visually seen through fashion. And again, embracing that desire to own yourself, speak for yourself, provide for yourself and your community was expressed creatively through hip hop and fashion. And we see that throughout time. And when hip hop began, we understand that presentation of self was the first thing that people got before anyone stepped to the mic, before anyone said anything. You had a visual image of the performer. And that visual image was very important. That carriage, that deportment, but also what the person was wearing, whether it was the MC, whether it was the DJ, whether it was the dancer, whether it was the graffiti artist. That fashion, that presentation was extremely important. And embracing that, the idea that African Americans are the purveyors of style. People in hip hop were able to grow businesses, become entrepreneurs, and create a whole economy through hip hop and through hip hop fashion. And as we saw over time, that hip hop fashion initially was ignored by mainstream fashion, but ironically enough, it was embraced as soon as it proved to be monetarily effective.
I must compliment all 25 of the authors because they came together to give hip hop a new view. But you were all bold as young scholars because you were determined to bring in those people who had such a great influence on hip hop. You were able to convince Mr. A.J. Calloway to be the initial person and the front person to work with you. But many of these other individuals came forward to support you. I would like to ask each of you, how do you feel the Hip Hop Conference, which is also reflected in your book, how did the Hip Hop Conference help change the community's view of hip hop? How do you think people attending the conference came away with a different knowledge of hip hop?
I think their point of view was expanded, actually. People really don't realize the impact that hip hop has in the world, as you said before, but also the history of hip hop and where it actually began. So the people have they needed to know that it didn't just pop up, that it was a process of experiences in the African diaspora that actually created hip hop.
Ms. McDermott?
So I believe that the hip hop conference, at least for my generation, it was a way to both create a more solid connection between hip hop, because we are essentially children of hip hop because it was already established by the time we were born. And it was a way to learn different aspects and a way to canonize hip hop in the field of history, because hip hop history is not something that is just decades in the past. It's something that is made every single day. It's every moment with every single person. It is a culmination of culture and of change, and that embodies hip hop. In the conference, people were talking about how hip hop had changed their lives for the better, how it was able to have them make businesses, create lives for themselves where before they didn't think they had any options. And so it was a point of inspiration in saying, you can do this too. You can reclaim the music for yourselves and bring this kind of power in your own lives, this kind of change in your own lives.
Yes, I think the hip hop conference, especially for me, and I know this is evident for other people in the audience, that it gave us a larger view of what hip hop is. Many times in the United States, we can have a very surface level view of hip hop as a form of entertainment, and it has been criticized for being very vulgar, for discussing issues such as sex, drugs, and violence. But it's a lot bigger than that, and that's not what it started out as. It was a community-centered way for African Americans to communicate the different issues and aspects of our culture and our community. And it has grown beyond that to be ventured into different industries and touches on many different cultural issues, and the influence of how hip hop is a very big communicative tool. It has expanded beyond that and has impacted many different countries around the world, and are utilizing it the same way that African Americans did in the beginning.
Well, I believe the hip hop conference at Howard specifically, as discussed in the book Hip Hop at 50, brought hip hop down to a level where everyday people could embrace it, could touch it, and could embody it. In the book Hip Hop at 50, we hear various authors talk about different aspects of hip hop, but the Hip Hop Culture Conference at Howard University allowed those artists to come and interface with not only students, but also people from the Washington, D.C. area. And I think the Hip Hop Culture Conference, which was commemorated last year, Hip Hop at 50, but when it was started at Howard University, it was the first. And it was a way that hip hop, people in hip hop, not only artists, but those people that are behind the scenes, the attorneys, the designers, also were able to speak and interface with students and also the local community. And I think that because Howard is so uniquely positioned in Washington, D.C., it not only spoke to those that were considered traditional hip hop heads, either from New York or the West Coast, but it also embraced people from the Deep South, the Caribbean, also people in Washington, D.C., through their expression of go-go music as well. And so hip hop, as we know, is very, very open to different cultures, and it embraces everyone. And the Hip Hop Conference did so as well.
In closing, I would like each of you all, if you would please, as a part of the Hip Hop Conference, I think one of the most notable things that was said, each of the presenters said happy birthday to hip hop and took the time to specifically say, happy birthday, hip hop. And this is what we wish for you in the future. Your book does it so beautifully, but I wish each of you would just in a very short way say happy birthday to hip hop on this 51st birthday. And what do you wish for hip hop sitting right here in front of you?
Well, I will say happy birthday by saying thank you. Thank you for continuing the resistance movement. Thank you for representing us and our culture throughout the diaspora.
For me, I would say happy birthday and thank you for creating a way for me to be both bold in my Blackness and centered in my Blackness, because I grew up hearing music bumping out the speakers just through childhood to now, and knowing that this is okay, this is right. And in the future, I hope you can stay authentic, that you say for the community and not just by companies.
I just want to say happy birthday, hip hop, and thank you for providing a medium for African people all around the world to voice their issues and to share their culture with everyone else.
I also thank hip hop for allowing a vehicle for African Americans to, well, not only African Americans, but for everyone to express themselves, but particularly noting that imitation is the highest form of flattery. And throughout hip hop, everyone has imitated, duplicated, replicated, but has never, ever been as creative as the originators of hip hop.
I just have to ask a quick question. First of all, how did you reach out? The book is so compelling because it's not just students. How did you reach out to the broader community? Can you give us one sentence on the way you, as one of the leaders, intentionally reached out beyond just students at Howard?
I use social media.
I would go through community centers like in Alexandria and so forth.
I reached out on social media as well as other fellow classmates at Howard University.
I also used museums through and publicized through public history.
I said that because at least 3 of the authors are community members, and you encourage people to submit from the Washington community who attended the conference. So their essays are in the book. You created a book that was not just students, alumni like AJ Calloway, D. Angeletti, and Matt Middleton, and a number of Haq Islam, other businessmen. You reached out beyond just the walls of the university to bring in people, community people like Ms. Santiago, who's Puerto Rican, who talked about the Puerto Rican influence. It's amazing that through your networks, you created a book that was astounding, not just for hip hop, but the way that hip hop impacted on the broader community. And I would like to say, for hip hop, thank you for your work and for the legacy you've created. Thank you.
Real quick tidbit on expectations. A couple